Welcome to Lead Is to Learn, the podcast where we explore the theories and thoughts behind leadership, your career, and your personal growth. I'm your host, Chris Waters, and today we're doing something a little different. This is a special type of episode where I offer a one-off free coaching session to someone seeking guidance on their career journey. Throughout this session, we'll explore real-time challenges, tackle dilemmas, and work together to uncover insights that can help this individual to approach the challenge they are experiencing. The goal is to empower them with the tools and perspectives they need to move forwards. Now, here's something important. At the end of every coaching session, I give each person the choice of whether they'd like to share this experience anonymously on the podcast or to keep it private. Some choose to share, allowing others to learn from their story, while others prefer to keep their conversation between us. Either way, it's completely up to them. So, if you've ever wondered what a coaching session is like, or want to hear how others navigate their challenges, you're in the right place. Let's get started. As we listen to the conversation, I'll occasionally pause to explain some of the techniques and approaches I use during the session, offering insights into why I chose to coach in this way. You'll notice that at times we move between pure coaching, asking open-ended questions to help the individual find their own answers, and mentoring, where I offer guidance or share my own experiences or ideas to best support the client. This blend of coaching and mentoring allows me to tailor the session to the unique needs of the person, ensuring they get the most out of our time together.
First off, I just want to make sure that you are aware that you own this conversation. So anything that is said here is a perfectly safe space. I won't share it on unless I explicitly ask you. And it's up to you. You can pass on any advice, any thoughts yourself to anyone else. So just want to make sure that you're comfortable to share anything. I don't know you personally, so.
Yeah, no, that's all fine by me.
And there may actually be times where, as you're talking, I might want to challenge your thinking. And I don't want you to think that that's me being harsh or anything. I just want to make sure we get to the bottom of anything that you might be thinking. Are you okay and prepared for that to happen?
Yes.
And at times, if there are moments where I feel like I need to come out of coaching into mentoring, I will specifically ask your permission to do so. So you'll know that this will be my opinion rather than me just coaching you.
Okay, sounds good.
So you've just heard the opening to the conversation. This was very much us contracting. In this, I'm making sure that the client is aware of what's about to happen and what to expect. I'm being very open that there may be times that I'm going to challenge them. I'm also making sure that they're aware that they own this space, they own the conversation, so they feel like they have ownership over what's about to happen. Having done this, it's then about right-sizing the conversation, making sure that we're aware of the time span, and very early on, deciding what success is going to look like. Where is it we're trying to get to over this period of time? Because remember, this is a one-off coaching session, so we want to make sure that we make progress within that time so that the client comes away feeling like this session was useful to them.
Obviously, the first thing to kick this off is we have an hour at least together. What would be success at the end of that hour for you?
I think having like a direct goal in where I want my career to go. I'm at the point now where I am just applying for anything and everything job related because I need a job.
Okay.
I don't really know what I want to end up doing, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. We will come away from this with at least one goal, one action point that would be successful for you.
Perfect.
So can you then tell me what 5 to 10 years time, what would feel successful for you? What would be success at that moment in time?
Oh, that's a great question. I think because I'm coming out of a career that I've put 8 years into and I'm wanting to change drastically, I feel that being in a space where I feel comfortable, my mental health is in a good place. I am kind of thriving in a position where I'm not feeling overworked, but I'm feeling appreciated.
Okay.
I think that's kind of the number one thing for me.
I'm just making a note of this, sorry.
No, of course.
So key highlights there. Comfortable, you want to feel comfortable in what you're doing. So can you tell me what led you to feel uncomfortable in the career that you just came out of?
So I was teaching for, it was 8 years in the UK. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I was uncomfortable because I actually left quite positively. But I was very much overworked to a point where I felt that the children I was working with, I was failing. So even though I was putting in, I was in work in the building at 6:30 and I would leave between 4 and 6 p.m. and I would put in 100% of myself every day. I came out of it every day feeling like I'd failed quite a few of the children in my class. So like that feeling every day, day in, day out for 8 years it eats away at you.
Okay. So it's interesting. You said you've left positively.
Mm.
Do you mean positively in terms of your colleagues, or do you mean
Yeah.
positively in terms of yourself and you felt you'd done enough, you now need to move on?
Not in myself. I left because I felt that I need a change for my mental health because it was taking quite a negative toll. But I left in a good place with my head teacher, with my line manager, with my colleagues. I wasn't and the children, of course. I wasn't leaving because I hated the job. I was leaving because it was a lot. It's too much for anyone to kind of deal with, really.
It's interesting at that moment when you just said that, you also let out a bit of a sigh as you said.
Yeah.
What will
Because I love teaching. I love working with kids. I enjoy that part of the job. It's just when you're contracted from 8 till 4 and I can't get all my work done between 6:30 and 6. It's just very hard. And you're in charge of 30 children with severe needs and it's a lot. It's a job you don't get paid enough for or enough recognition for.
Okay. So we've gone forward 5 years then. You're saying you want a drastic change. You just come out of this 8-year career then.
Yeah.
And you want to be in a career that's comfortable for you, which it sounds like it's something which you don't come away from feeling drained, feeling like you failed. You want to come away feel like you positive. Mental health is a big part. You've mentioned that twice while we were talking there, that you need to feel that your mental health is not taking an impact from your job.
Definitely.
And you use the word thriving. You want to feel like you're thriving, where you're not overworked, but you feel appreciated.
Absolutely. And I really like a challenge, but there's to a point where if you're being challenged every second of every day, it no longer feels like a challenge. It feels like the norm.
Yeah.
So when you're constantly in fight or flight mode every day for your time and all of that, it just becomes too much.
Okay. Just the last little bit on your 8 years so far in your career. So had you worked your way up to a higher position or had you remained at the same position the whole way through?
No. So I started off as just a class teacher across 2 schools. And then the third school I was at, I became art lead. And then I became PSHE and RE lead. So I was in charge of 3 subjects. So I was in a middle leader position for the last 4 years. And being in charge of 3 subjects is quite a lot as well, on top of all the duties as a teacher as well.
Okay, this is good because obviously you've worked your way up then. So so you've moved from one school to a second school and then to the third school. In the third school, you then took a lead of initially just art.
Yeah.
What made you make that decision to take that job then?
I majored in music and art in university alongside my education degree. It's always been a huge thing. Like in this room right now, it's just filled with my craft / DIY projects. Like it's just constantly doing that. So having the opportunity to kind of lead in a subject that I was really passionate about was something that I really wanted to do. So although I knew it was going to be more work, it was something I was really passionate about. So yeah, decided to give that a go.
Okay. So it was a passion led rather than career aspiration led. It was your
Yeah.
okay. What then changed to go to the PSHE and RE lead then? Because that's obviously not like linked into your.
No. Yeah. So I started off with art, and that was actually an unpaid role within my school. And then I went to PSHE and RE because it was a paid role and also kind of was on the same level as art. So I kind of had already done learning walks, CPD training to teachers, been part of oh my God, what are they called? Subject leader groups within our borough. And it was just an opportunity to get a little bit more money as well, because I wasn't getting paid for art, but also kind of change. Like I also really enjoy. I worry about my mental health, and I'm very much like I do anything to protect my mental health. But for 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, they don't really know how to do that. And our PSHE curriculum was not great. And PSHE and RE, they came as a pair. So I didn't want RE, but I took it on with the PSHE because I really feel that children these days are exposed to things a bit earlier than what we would like them to, and we don't teach them to be as kind of forthcoming in themselves. It's more like, we got maths, we got English, we've got to get this done, but the social emotional stuff takes a backseat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting what we've kind of gone for. So you've got a passion-led career move, obviously a financial-led career move, but then when you were talking through that, there was this other sort of passion that came through, which is, it sounds to me, the PSHE role, this working with children.
Definitely.
So a summary of what we just experienced there. So by going into the future initially, not too far, but just close enough to be within touching distance, the client was able to consider what could possibly be different at that point. And at this point, some key truths came out about what they wanted. Picking out on this and then taking the time to reflect back what they said to them reassures them that they are being heard. And in doing so, gives them the chance to correct anything which maybe I've picked out. And then I chose to challenge on one of the things she raised. In this case, this was being comfortable. And I asked what made them feel uncomfortable in their previous job. In doing so, I was looking for a deeper truth. It was clear that this uncomfortable feeling was hiding and covering up something deeper down. So, from this, what came out was the real detail, which was a sense of not feeling she has been able to succeed. She wasn't able to achieve what she wanted to. And we finally got to the key point, which was recognition. By giving time to explore and question deeper some of her words, we really got to that key point, the lack of a success measure, a sense of achievement or recognition. I then wanted to explore what career moves and progressions she has had previously. This really would help me gauge her aspirations and her confidence in her own ability, as well as the opinions of those around her throughout her career so far. Notice through the conversation, I've been intentional about reflecting back after she's finished what I've heard her say and clarifying my takeaway points. Now, what we found at this moment was that each career step she had made also told us something about what drives her at each step. From this, we found out that 2 key drivers behind her career moves so far have been her passions, she's always pursued her passions, and financial motives. She also really hooked into and spoke in depth about one of the passions for the social and emotional development of children. Now we'll see how that comes back up later in the conversation, but let's see where we go from here.
So if we go forwards to that 5-10 years in the future, then we're looking at a version of you that is where you belong.
Yeah.
If you were to be that you, so imagine you are that you,
Yeah.
and you come back and you talk to yourself, what is that version of you telling you right now to do?
Ooh. Probably not give up, because right now I'm feeling very disheartened. I've spent almost 2.5 months looking for a job and haven't even been able to get an interview. I would say that everything's going to be okay and that you're going to find your place.
Yeah.
Because it's changing careers is huge. Like, I moved countries to change careers into a career I thought I'd be in for the rest of my life, and it's just drained my soul.
Yeah. Okay, so 2 main messages there, and we're going to keep hold of that, is not give up
Yeah.
and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So now obviously we've got our career journey. We've sort of got you to where you are now. We've picked out a few things, and we can maybe bring that up as and when it comes out of the conversation. And we've got these 2 messages of not give up and everything's going to be okay. So you've just said you spent 2.5 months then looking for a career. So right now, today, what is your job?
Mm-hmm. Unemployed.
Mhm.
I left it. Is that a job? Yeah, I left at the end of, well, I finished up at the end of August, but obviously I had summer holidays. So I spent the summer holidays, and I think being quite optimistic about finding a job sooner than what has kind of happened. And so it's very disheartening when you're just applying for 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs a day and not able to get an interview. I ended up going through a company. I paid money to get my CV rewritten, because I know there's lots of jobs now that use AI to either say yes or no to CV. So I thought maybe my CV wasn't being read by the AI properly, but I'm still not getting any interviews. And I feel like I have a lot of skills that are really great skills that are transferable from teaching. And I just feel a bit deflated.
Okay. So these job roles that you're applying for, is it specific, or are you just going across the board to everything?
It's not everything, but there is quite like a scope of different jobs that I've applied for. Like, there's a few that I've applied for that are all different organizations, but the same similar type role, which is still within education, but it's like, one of them, for instance, was the zoo, but being in charge of the educational programs within the zoo, which I was like, I am perfect for this job. And I didn't even get through to the first round. Like, that was the one job that I hit every single, because there's some that I'm not going to hit all of the criteria, but I was like, I hit every single one of these. I have a really strong like skills with this. I've worked with children from primary to secondary. I've got 8 years of teaching behind me, but I didn't get it. But then I've gone the other way of applying for like admin assistant roles, and I've applied for can't even remember what half of it, because so many of them have the strangest titles. I can just have a look at some of the ones I've applied for. And that's the thing, is like, there's been a few that I've really, really wanted, but I just haven't gotten through there. Let's see what some of these ones are called. Deputy Head of Admissions, Office Manager, Office Support Assistant, Business Development Representative, SEND Commissions Officer, Operations Assistant, Personal Assistant. So quite a few of them are assistant roles in that, which I do have the skills for, but I'm just not making it through those 200-300 people that have applied for that job too.
Okay. Just from the highlights of the ones you just said there, so you've got some within education, admin assistants and assistant roles, the admissions roles. So these are quite broad.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you're putting in a CV with your cover letter for each one?
I'm doing all of them have cover letters, and I've got one cover letter that I'm reworking depending on like what the company's aspects are and things like that, the skills. So changing it up based on what they really want.
Okay. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a strategy around this in a sense, because at the moment it sounds to me like you've got to the desperation point of let's put everything out.
I really am.
So I'm going to semi come out of coaching for a second.
Okay.
From when I asked you the question, what's your job at the moment? And you said unemployed, straight off the bat, you've then labeled yourself as unemployed.
Okay.
Whereas I want you to try and reframe that and go, well, what is your job right now? My job is looking for a job.
Okay.
So that is my job. So I get up and from 9 to 5, that is my work. My work
Yeah.
is to send this out. And by making it your job, what you are going to start having to try and do is not emotionally attach yourself to jobs. Because, for example, the one at the zoo
Yeah.
definitely hit you hard because you're like, oh, I'm perfect for this. So in your head, you already have given yourself the job. You have given
Yeah,
the
I
job.
did.
And then if it hasn't come through, that's like a big blow, like, oh, and now you're saying, well, why not? And then you're saying, well, I failed at that. I'm not good enough for that. And then you're like, okay, well, now maybe I'll go to another job, which is not quite as high up, not quite, what I want.
Yeah.
So I think we need to get more of a strategy around that. Flipping back into coaching then, what could your day-to-day strategy be if your job was to apply for jobs?
Okay, because at the moment I'm doing kind of like a half day because I am feeling deflated and like not, I don't know, it is taking a toll on me. Um, it's I don't know, that's really tough because there's quite a lot of hours in a day.
Yep.
So at the moment what I'm doing is I'm going on 3 or 4 different job boards and finding and saving jobs. I go through and save about 5 or 6 different jobs every morning, and then after I say 5 or 6 that I'm like, yeah, I could do that, I could see myself doing that, I then go and apply for each one, and applying for each one could take me 5 minutes or it could take me 45 minutes to an hour, which some of them do take ages to do. But then I don't know what else I could do. I haven't had to, in the teaching in London, I've had about 50 calls this week from recruiting agencies seeing my CV online going, we want you. We've got like jobs. I could get back into teaching this afternoon if I wanted to. So when I haven't had to look for a job outside of teaching, which has been very easy to jump from job to job. So I don't know what else I can do apart from save jobs and apply for jobs.
Reviewing this section of the session, I took her back to the future version of herself, and then asked her what that version of herself is asking her to do now. She picked out not give up and everything is going to be okay. I pointed out that we were going to keep hold of these, and these will be common themes that I will bring up throughout the remainder of the session. These were her words, from her future, from her optimistic self, not her current struggling self. I then asked her, what is her job today? This was an open but leading question. In doing so, I was looking to see how her mindset labelled her current position, and she immediately went to unemployed. There was no hesitation. She also highlighted her original optimism for finding a job straight away. She shared her disappointment, but is obviously very lost with what to do next. I then probed about her approach and strategy to get a sense of what she is currently doing. Having previously gathered why she finds herself in her current position, this section of the conversation was really about what she is currently doing to transition herself from where she was to where she wants to be, her strategy. What came out of this was an unstructured, unclear strategy. She also highlighted one particular job, the one in the zoo, and the way she spoke about it became clear she had emotionally given herself the job while applying for it, and in doing so, she had opened herself up to disappointment and to a real knock to her confidence. She also seems to be applying for too broad a role. In a sense, she's throwing all of her darts at the board, hoping one will stick. I reflected back the roles which she listed to me, and with that also the application process in the form of a question. I asked her, So you're putting in job applications and cover letters. This was really looking to highlight the task which she is taking on herself with so many applications all in one go. And she explained that she had a cover letter as a base letter which she then adapted for all the different types of roles. And that really highlighted the lack of an intentional strategy for getting a role which would best suit her, rather than just any job. She'd forgotten that she left teaching to find a role where she belongs. Her strategy currently screams desperation. Now, I also, you'll notice, came out of coaching, and I said it to her that I was coming out of coaching. This was when she basically agreed that she had reached desperation point. I chose to do this at this point as she really needed help in channeling towards a direction and a strategy. So when she had originally reached out to me for coaching, she literally said in her message, "I need help." So coming out of coaching to a more guiding space allowed me as the coach to keep the session moving in a forwards direction towards her desired outcome for the session, which was to have some actions to move forwards. Now, I started this by looking to reframe her current job, and I reflected back to her what I understood from her strategy so far. Now, this allowed me to get her mind now thinking that we need a strategy. And then I came back into coaching mode to ask her what her day-to-day strategy could be, having encouraged this shift in mindset. So I'd shifted her direction back forwards. What could you be doing now? She went back to what her current day is and how that feels. She went back to past and current rather than future, which again highlighted her struggles at knowing where to move forwards. But you'll notice she actually had a very brief moment of realization where she pointed out that there was quite a lot of hours in the day. It was a fleeting point at this moment because she went back to explaining what she does currently. Now, I didn't interrupt her here, as this sometimes could lead to an insight still, as sometimes the irrational actions come to light when they explain them. But she said, "I don't know what else I could do." But within this, we have actually found her sticking point. She is at a loss, as she is so used to being in a shortage sector. She has very quickly hit panic mode. She's applied for almost anything and everything, abandoning her reasons for leaving teaching completely, and almost looking to get anything other than a teaching role, just to justify her reason for leaving teaching. So, where we go from here is to really look to address and come up with a strategy to move forwards with intention. So let's see how this went.
Okay. So I think you need to narrow down onto the type of job.
Okay.
And then we need to start making a targeted strategy about that. So the things I starred and you said that you really found a passion for, working with children, I think that's, you've got a skill set that's directly applicable to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely something that you can sell.
Definitely.
You've got your one side of things is your craft, DIY, creativity. And then this other one, which you've said about PSHE.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can start looking around, is there any jobs which involve some of that? So if all you're doing is looking for jobs that is to do with that,
Mm-hmm.
it maybe takes your 5 or 6 a day down to 2 or 3, but you're going to spend a bit more time on those. And I think what you need to do is start looking at maybe, is there any courses or upskilling you can do for free?
Okay.
Because then what you can do with that is you can say, I'm also working towards this. So in your cover letter, you can say that I've found a free course about, child's mental health, counseling, things like that. That can be straight away applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's an intentional act of you working each day towards achieving the job, rather than just, I put a job advert out and that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm going to upskill myself alongside putting these adverts out.
Okay.
So
yeah, definitely. And I've got the time.
Exactly.
So I do have the time to be able to do that. I hadn't really thought about kind of upskilling. I thought just get as many resumes out there and like applications out there to finally find something.
And you never know as well. You might be doing some courses and upskilling over the next 2 weeks, and then a job advert comes out in 3 weeks' time, and it's like, oh, not only have I got all of this stuff I had before, but I've also now got these 2 extra little mini courses I did, which are perfect to put into the application that separates me from someone else.
Definitely. Okay, that is such a great idea.
Okay, so we got that as a sort of an approach, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously a day-to-day thing. So you can maybe spend the morning looking at jobs, like you said.
Yeah.
You've got your time that you can spend upskilling. So maybe at lunchtime when you're just eating your food, you're like, I'm fresh. Now I can do some upskilling. And then in the afternoon, maybe that's when you ping it off, because then it'll sit on someone's desk the next morning and they're more likely to read through it and be in a better place to do that rather than the end of the day when they just look at something and go, oh, I'll throw it in the bin.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's great.
So that could obviously take a while.
Yeah.
And, how are you for being able to sustain yourself? Obviously, this is a personal question.
No, of course, that I'm fine with answering personal questions. So my partner and I are looking at moving to Wales next year. So this is also where it kind of like takes a little bit of a thing, because I might end up in a job where I might need to move in a year's time.
Yeah.
But if I then can get into that role, then I've got experience and then hopefully would be able to find something better. Or it could be something where I'm working from home or something like that. That all depends. Money-wise, we're trying to save for a house. So I have savings behind me, which I would like to use for a house, but it can be used for this process. We've kind of worked it out. I can sustain until end of December at like the latest, without it being a huge impact on our like savings.
Okay. Because I was going to say, how open are you to doing some work that is literally just work to get money?
No, absolutely. So I put in an application at Sainsbury's yesterday because I was like, we got Sainsbury's around the corner. I did retail for 10 years. I can do it. I just need something for money for now. I was trying to do some supply work, but with my education, I did it all in Australia. And when I moved over here, I started teaching and I was paid as unqualified. And I didn't really know I could get full qualification over here because my school I was at for the last 6 years, they paid me as I was qualified. So I don't have my QTS, even though I've been teaching for 8 years. And a lot of supply companies won't take me because I don't have QTS, even though I've taught for 8 years. So it's like when I left teaching, I was like, I'll do supply for a little bit until I find a job. But then they were like, no, we can't take you. And I was like, oh, shit, what am I going to do to sustain money while I'm looking for like a job I really want?
Okay.
And that's why I think I've gotten to a point where I'm now just applying for anything and everything in my like wheelhouse for the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So you are open to doing that too, because that can then
Absolutely.
push that out a little bit further, maybe to like January, February,
Yeah.
And also, if we get to December time
and
you're putting applications in, you're going to have a gap.
Exactly.
Which they're going to ask you about.
Exactly.
What about this career gap? So obviously you can say, well, I'm waiting for the right opportunity, blah, blah, blah. But you could, if we go through the process we've talked about, you then say, well, I've been upskilling myself.
Upskilling, yeah.
You've got the idea that you can maybe say, well, I took on temporary roles just to sustain me.
Absolutely.
But you definitely want to sell the fact that you are upskilling rather than I'm spending every day just putting in applications.
Of course, yeah.
Because if they're on their side and you say you've been putting applications and you're looking for a job, they're thinking, okay, well, I'm one of 150 applications she's put out. She doesn't really want this job.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I haven't, this is the longest already. This 2 months is the longest gap I've ever had since I started working at 14. So I'm like, I'm finding it very difficult to not work. I'm like, yeah, it's the longest. It's only been 2.5 months, but it's the longest time I've ever not worked.
In terms of teaching as well, teaching contracts finish at the end of August as well. So technically you've only been unemployed since then rather.
Yes, true. I got to think of it that way as well. So it's only been a month and a bit.
Yeah.
A month and a half, I think, almost. Yeah.
So you're 6 weeks into your job search.
That sounds so much better.
As you can see, As part of trying to come up with a strategy, I started by highlighting her passions, which she mentioned in the first section of our session, in order to make sure that we're becoming more intentional around these passions. I reflected back what she had told me, pointing out that she should refine down from applying to 5 or 6 roles on anything to just 2 or 3, but spending more time on the applications. And we then explored the possibility of looking to upskill herself with her time, intentionally working towards her desired career rather than just applying for any job. She actually used the insight that she had earlier about realizing how much time she has in her day, focused that on her ability to upskill herself, which she said she never realized she had. I then dropped in when she could apply for the job role, in terms of applying in the evening so that it sits on someone's desk in the morning. This is just a small subtle change that you could make in order to make sure that your application is being seen at the right time of day. I then went on to ask about her capacity to sustain this as an ongoing process. Now, she also mentioned here, as well as financially being able to sustain this, her plan to move to Wales in the future. Now, this was something that I parked short term within this session. So rather than jumping on this right there and right then and derailing the session by exploring the Wales point that she mentioned here, I parked it for something that I could bring up later. She also highlighted here something we didn't explore earlier, another barrier to her ability to sustain herself short term, and that was her lack of having a QTS. Now, this also highlights and reinforces why she is in desperation mode. Now, I also highlighted here her ability to fill her time, her career gap that could be appearing on her CV, with her ability to upskill, rather than just getting any job and her CV looking like she's jumping from job to job. She reiterated here that she finds it very difficult to not work. However, we had refocused her mind already that her job is about getting a job, about upskilling herself, about developing herself for her future career. I also, at this point, and you'll notice this, I highlighted that her career gap is actually much shorter than her current idea of it. It's actually half the time that she has in her head. She feels like she stopped working in July, when actually she had said that she'd given herself the summer holidays before she started looking for a job. So it's only actually been 6 weeks. And you can hear right at the end of this short section that her tone has an element of relief from that realization. Let's see where we go from here.
The other thing I wanted to look at then, so you're going to apply for this. So let's say you get yourself into an interview.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about being in front of someone and selling yourself for the job?
I've never really had to do it. So this is where, like, I'm quite confident and I'm a talker, if you haven't realized already. And I kind of, I've done lots of presentations. So like I'm constantly training people at my job, my old job. And I've been in front of people a lot, but I get very nervous. I don't look like I'm nervous, but I do get very nervous. I feel that I do really well. That's like, I do feel deep inside that I would do really well, but I've only ever interviewed really at teaching jobs. So it's something that I have been looking at. Like I've been looking at some things on LinkedIn in regards to like preparing for interviews and questions that could be asked and things like that. I think I would do okay, but I still need work on it, definitely, because I don't really know what to expect.
Yeah. Because teaching interviews can be like a whole morning, some of them can be a whole day.
They're a whole day. My last one for this job I was at, I went morning and taught and then had an interview, then went away for a little bit and then came back for a secondary interview.
Yeah.
So it was like a whole day thing. And you have to prepare a lesson, teach a lesson to kids that you don't know.
Yeah.
And then they speak to the people within the classroom, like the other adults, and get their opinion on you. They have an opinion on you. And then I just sat down and had like an informal chat with the head teacher. It was an interview, but it wasn't an interview. It was like just a chat because he was like, we really want you, but we have to ask these questions type thing. So,
yeah. Whereas I guess if you go into an industry, an interview, it's going to be a much shorter period of time,
hmm
and you're going to have to try and present yourself in a manner. So I think the key focus is to look back over your career and think about some of the times within your career, particularly the stepping up into a new role, a new job, and trying to get the confidence that you had to put yourself forward for those things and say, well, they're the things that you need to highlight.
hmm
So if you were going to highlight some things in terms of like key challenges that you've overcome,
Yeah.
what would you say for key challenges?
I would say the key challenges that I've had is the pressure from the school to overhaul 3 different curriculums within a year. So usually we have, when you are doing a curriculum overhaul, you'll have like a 2-year process to get it done. Because they knew I was leaving, they wanted me to do 3 subjects within a year instead of 1 every 2 years. So I spent all last year really working with the staff, the community, and the local area and other schools to really work on the curriculum and update it and make sure that it was like the best for the children. So when I did leave, I was leaving in a really good position for the people who were going to take over for me.
Okay, that sounds really good. I think in that, definitely highlight the working with other people,
Mm-hmm.
because that's key.
Yeah.
If they then asked you about something you're the most proud of, would you still use the same example or would you use something else?
No. So when I came into the role of art leader, it was a very cut and copy curriculum that most schools used. I came in and decided that we were going to have an annual art show. So the kids would work all term on an art project that they then could present. And we had some of the children come and do music performances. We had a few teachers do some performances, and we had the school I was at was near a local gallery that lent us some gallery displays. So we had all of the children's artwork up. We had wine and like coffees and everything for parents to come through and see all their children's artwork built in a way that looked like an art gallery. So all the children were so excited to like pull their parents up to show them these amazing pieces of work. And that's now an annual thing. So it'll be going into its 5th year this year. Did my handover with the new art lead, and she's really excited to take it and keep running with it.
So for those 2 key examples, they're really good. Obviously, they're focused around education. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what you need to do as well, as you're preparing for an interview, is look at those and pick out the transferable skills, the things which you can highlight. And as you're telling the story, make sure you emphasize those bits so that you don't get so lost in the
story.
education, in the
Yeah.
story, that you're highlighting and you're aware, oh, I worked with other stakeholders, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that you implemented a change, that you led through people, you did something new that hadn't been done before, that it was successful, that it's been taken on by someone new. So you've left it in a position that they're able to pick it up and run with it,
Mm-hmm.
grow it further. So it's sort of like changing the language a little bit.
Yeah, I am very much teacher based.
Which is fine if you're going into an education setting.
Of course, yeah.
But definitely if you're thinking about particularly if you're going towards, the next long-term career, because that's the idea, you're moving to a new career.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that you are that prime person for that opportunity moving forward.
Definitely. So would you suggest like if I got an interview, going through kind of like their job description and picking out the keywords that they've got of what they're looking for and making sure that when I'm telling a story that I'm using those sort of words?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I would also have you done like a values assessment of yourself yet? Have you sat down and done something of yourself?
No.
Okay.
A values assessment? Never even heard of it.
So if you were to sit there right now, you can obviously take 2-3 minutes, thinking about it before you even commit to it. If you were to put down like 3 or 4 key values, things that really matter and mean something to you that you're looking for in your next career, what would they be?
Oh, that's so difficult when you really are thinking about that. Oh, I think collaboration is a big one for me. I like working with people. That sort of, that collaboration, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What else would I? God, I didn't think this would be so hard. I don't know. I think teaching has kind of made me have to do everything. So I've become good at that sounded very up myself there. I've become good at everything. Um, so collaboration, definitely. Working with people. I like working with people. I think appreciation. So being like valued and feeling like I'm making a difference, or I'm doing a good job, and that what I'm doing is I like to do things right the first time, but I'm not necessarily upset about making mistakes either. I do also like leading, and I like having people to lead and to mold as well. So I really, it's not just the children aspect that I'm talking about there, but like obviously I led lots of subjects, so I like that side of things. What are the values?
I've written down 4 from what you've said there.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want me to reflect back the 4 that you've said?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, big one, obviously, you picked it out straight off the bat, is collaboration.
Yeah.
And working with other people. You then said you couldn't tie down the words. So I wrote down 3 words, and one of them will probably sing with you. So you said being valued, being appreciated, and you hinted at recognition.
Yeah.
I feel like it may be recognition that you're looking for.
Yeah. Being in a job where everyone is pushed to the same pressure, you don't really like I can say that in the last year of working, I hadn't felt appreciated. And that does make you kind of not want to do your best.
Yeah.
But you can't not in that role. There's no way that you can't not, you have to give your best at all times being a teacher, because it's not, you're affecting 30 children, you know?
Yeah. I think with that comes a sort of warning caveat, in a sense of not many people are ever really taught how to recognize others.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard of like the love languages, but there's one for businesses as well that's very similar. And leading, there's 7 languages of leading, 5 love languages. So for example, if words of affirmation, for example, is the way that you recognize, your boss may not have that as their recognition language. So therefore it's not the one they use on others, because it's not the ones they look for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's being aware that there's different ways that people show recognition, and therefore we may not recognize it, if that makes sense, but they are showing recognition. So
yeah,
it's being aware of that as well. But definitely maybe finding an environment where your language of recognition is used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then obviously the freedom to make mistakes, I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
So that's bravery, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that goes hand in hand with one thing you said earlier, which was challenge. So if you are asked what your values are, I feel like you listed that very early on when we were talking. Challenge is definitely something that's there for you.
Definitely.
So challenge and the freedom to make mistakes, as well as freedom to succeed. And then you've said about leading, and in particular, you highlighted the development of others, so developing others, working with their growth. So you could potentially be looking at careers, maybe not even working with children. You could also work with adults where you are part of their professional development, their professional growth.
Yeah.
So you could always start applying to those sorts of roles as well, because it's a value that you have highlighted. So collaboration, recognition, bravery, and challenge, developing others. I think they're all things that maybe when you're looking and reading job adverts, when you're writing your application, your cover letter, if you keep those 5 things as your common thread throughout and say, these are my personal values, and I believe that I'm a right fit for your job that you're advertising because of this. And then maybe you're looking at their website, you're finding what their values are, and you can say, my value aligns with this.
Okay.
I don't know if you've done that sort of an approach in writing the letter.
No, it's more kind of like, how did the skills that they want, do I have them, and how do I have them? That's kind of haven't really gone across along the values kind of thing, but that's like a unique approach I haven't thought of.
I mean, you obviously want to highlight your skills and stuff and things that you've shown as well,
Of
but also
course.
your values are key. And then you want to be talking about both of those in interview as well.
Yeah, because that then tells them more about me, not just about what I can do.
And it shows that you've looked up their values, you've looked up their company, you've done your research. You're not just, here's a generic cover letter I'm changing and sending out because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're probably going to find you're only going to get a 5% traction on your applications, but those 5%, they know more about you now than they did before.
Exactly.
Within this section, you can see that I went on to exploring how she felt with regard to interviews. Now, she started off with hinting at being confident, and particularly going into the situation, having done presentations before at work, having helped to train individuals within her workplace. But she then admitted that she does get nervous, and she shared that she wasn't sure what to expect, as she has only really done job interviews for teaching. We then went on together to explore, as a result of this, the confidence that she had for her teaching interviews and her career progressions. So I actually asked her what was her biggest challenge and what were her proudest moments. 2 questions which could be asked at interview, but at the same time, this gets her thinking about those particular moments. She talked about the curriculum overhauls that she had, and then she went on to her art show, which she created from scratch, and a legacy with that she's left behind. Now, from these, I suggested picking out key transferable skills, like working with people, maybe different stakeholders, as well as those within the school setting that she has been in. And then I highlighted that she should make sure that she's not losing these skills, these transferable skills within the story. Because it's very easy for us to get lost within a story and brush over the skills. And particularly when you're going in with lots of education-based stories within other sectors, we need to make sure that we're picking out those transferable skills, almost to show that we're aware that they're there. So it's very much changing the language within an interview setting. Because remember, this is going to be her next long-term career. She then actually asked whether she should focus on the key skills that they are looking for within the job description when she's telling her stories, which I said yes, absolutely, but I also highlighted that she should explore how her values as well, her personal values, align with the company's and the job role. Now, this actually triggered a very brief values assessment, because she had never really heard of one and she had never done one before. This actually was a really interesting moment because I actually took a step back where I had been very much alongside her and working with her and actually giving her some advice, so almost becoming a bit more of a mentor within this. I actually asked for her values and took a step back. I did the coaching thing where I left the space. I vacated that space and I left a void for her to fill. And you can actually see that there was a moment where she almost felt a bit uncomfortable with that void. But then where it got silent, she then started to fill it in. She started talking. And then she went on to a monologue and she started talking through. And you can tell that she was forcing herself to explore herself. And through her monologue of her thoughts, she got to some key points. But she struggled to tie down the values themselves. I actually then asked permission to reflect back what I took from her monologue. And these were collaboration, which she was able to identify herself, recognition, which came through from her monologue, and I actually caveated here the need for her to find somewhere which shares the recognition in her language where she recognizes recognition, and then bravery and challenge and developing others. Now, through sharing these back to her, I shared as well how these values could open doors to careers that maybe she hadn't personally thought about. This approach could also put a more personal spin on her application letters, and she keyed into this as she took a realization at this moment that sharing this in her letters would actually share more about herself as well as what she can provide and do. Now, you will notice this section was very much not within the traditional coaching approach. I gave her space to do her thinking when we needed to, particularly with her values. But equally, I met her where she needed me to be, with some advice and some ideas to encourage her. There are moments where an individual may need you to step forward and help them along the journey as well. So in a sense, I was facilitating this part of the conversation rather than just coaching it. So noticing she was verbally saying she was confident, but at the same time she was sharing how she was nervous and unsure about this, I adapted what was needed based on what she shared with us. Now, as a result of this section of the conversation, I then decided that I would go from forwards facing and go into another retrospective moment, and I decided to take her back to her past successes to see what we could borrow from her previous experience in terms of confidence and success. So let's see where this went.
In terms of your career journey and going back to that,
Okay.
so can you tell me about a time where you felt successful and why you felt successful so that we can then cotton onto that and use that in an interview as well?
I felt successful. I would say last year with the results I got with the children in regards to their phonics screening test. So per year, there's a threshold that they have to meet. And I had a very high influx of EL learners throughout the year. So putting in extra interventions and implementing things at home with parents and being available kind of more throughout the school day for parents really helped get these kids from not knowing any English to passing their phonics screening test, which then reflects really positively on the school. So I think we had at the start, it was like a 30-something% pass rate that we were predicted at having, and we hit the 80% by the end of the year. Was really probably the best moment I felt teaching, really.
Okay. So obviously you felt accomplished in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me other feelings that you felt at that time?
Pride of the children, so very proud of how much effort they put in. Definitely exhausted. It's definitely one of them because it was a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of, moving parts that had to kind of fit in properly to get where we ended up getting. And I'd feel a sense of relief. I think the pressure of we want to hit 80, you're at 30. How can we get there? And that pressure, because we don't take the test till summer too, so the end of the school year. It's a long journey to get to where we kind of need it to be.
Okay. So I'm going to reflect that story back to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to change it.
Okay.
So a long journey to get to achieving results, going from 30% to 80%. So reflecting that now in a different story. So a long journey to get to a job, from putting in lots of applications and not having anything back, to getting to a point, hopefully, where you're putting in applications, you're getting lots of options back, and you go into it. You've said you felt tired at the end of it. I can tell you right now, after this process of trying to find a job, you are going to feel tired because you're going to have put a lot of work in.
Mm-hmm.
But you've just told me of a time that you've done that for a sustained amount of time, day in, day out, and you had pressures, obviously, because of the students who are right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the pressures are in the background, but there are still pressures there, aren't there? And you can feel them.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're doing a long process. We're 6 weeks in.
Yeah, only 6 weeks.
There are 6 weeks into this journey, and you've stepped forward. You come forward for help. You've asked me to help you for this. And you're going to now try and do something. You're going to put something hopefully in place from this,
Mm-hmm.
which will help you become more successful to getting, lots more job interviews from your applications. Now, you obviously, when you were doing that phonics training that you put in with the students, you had a clear target at the end of it,
Yeah.
which was they have to be good at this particular thing. What we need to now do is we need to make sure that you are applying not for every job, because if you're doing 5-6 applications a day, yes, it's disheartening. You're spreading yourself too thin. You're trying to hit too many criteria. You've got to try and remember, if you get one of those applications, everything about that application. You have to reread your letter. It's
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do now is focus in on very specific jobs that you're going to go for.
Yeah.
that you know that at some point if you did get that, you would enjoy that. The last thing you want to do is put yourself into another situation where you don't enjoy it. You then leave that job because you don't enjoy it. And now
you're back at square one. Yeah.
So you've just shown that you can do a hard thing day in, day out for a sustained amount of time and get great results.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, yes, you felt tired, but you felt proud of yourself. You felt accomplished. So all of these things you would feel again at the end when you can walk through the door of a new job or open the laptop for a new job.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
And you're like, well, I did this for myself.
Yeah.
I made the hard choice of leaving education behind. I made the hard choice of putting myself into a situation where every day I have to wake up and I have to follow a set procedure to try and get a job because my job is finding a job.
Yeah.
All of that at the end is going to pay off, just like working with those students.
Okay.
And you're going to feel proud of yourself at the end. You will. And we took yourself 5 years in the future and look back and you said those two things. You remember what it was?
Oh, it's worth it. It'll be worth it. Something like that. What did I say?
You said, don't give up.
Yep.
And everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you put yourself to you when you said you were most proud, if you went to the beginning of that year when you probably thought, oh my God, this is a daunting task. I've got these kids with 30%. If you said to yourself back then, those same two things, you would have proved yourself right.
Yeah.
And you're going to do that again this time.
Yeah, I will. I will.
In this brief section, I look to get back to a more coaching approach. I asked her to tell me about a time when she was successful. She started reflecting. However, having taken her to this space and making her feel proud of herself, you can verbally hear by the end of her recollection that that moment made her feel really proud and accomplished. I ensured that she vocalized the feelings that she had from this success. And then, what you'll notice is that I then took her story of success and projected this story forwards now in terms of the journey she's currently on. I wrapped her current challenge within her story of success. This is easily doable, as all stories of success take the same journey. They start with doubt, with despair, and through being endured and hard work are overcome and end in pride and a sense of accomplishment. Yet sometimes we need reminding of these, especially during times of struggle, that we have been here before and we've got through it. I reminded her of the two things that the future version of herself said to her, and I also wrapped in the story that I reflected back to her the steps that we'd currently identified that we needed to achieve together in the remainder of the session. So let's continue and see where we get from here.
So what I want you to do right now is, we've had this conversation and I told you a few things. I've gone into mentor and coach and come back and forth just because I felt like we needed to. What are you now going to do as of Monday? Remember, it's a job, so it's Monday to Friday.
See, that's the thing. When your job is looking for a job, is you don't know what day it is.
Friday today.
It's Friday. Yeah.
So from Monday morning.
Yeah.
What's your process going to be? Let's try and put that in place.
Okay. So the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to think of it as a job.
Okay.
So it is my job to look for a job. I'm going to look up some upskilling courses that I can do in relation to the jobs that we've kind of talked about.
Okay, so what sort of things are we thinking there?
So I'm thinking some maybe PSHE related ones. I also think maybe some like admin kind of related ones, but I'm thinking more to like upskill my computer skills.
Okay.
Because I think that there's a few jobs that are that I've looked at, even that are in that education-y world, that still need a lot of like, I can say I've used Excel, but I've just put in some data at school. I don't know how to use it properly. So I think upskilling on a few of those things.
Do you know where you will go to look for those?
No, but I thought I could just Google.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a few on LinkedIn, actually. I have seen a couple on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But I don't know where to kind of start for that.
So yeah, Googling's good. LinkedIn, there's Uplearn. You can maybe try and find.
Okay.
In fact, I have an app on my phone, which would be good for you as well. Udemy, Udemy. Some of those would be like £25 courses, things like that, but you're paying and there's, they get certificates at the end of it.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I am going to look at some jobs, but be really specific on kind of what I'm looking for. I'm going to have a look at the values of those jobs and see how they align with my values. And then instead of getting the applications done as quick as possible, really taking the time on writing a cover letter that's very specific to my skill and my values and how it aligns with their values, and make sure that I don't get too emotionally attached to the jobs.
Yeah, I was going to try and get that out of you in a minute. Yeah.
I said try. I don't know whether that'll help, but I think cutting it down to 2 to 3 jobs a day, rather than trying to apply for as many as possible.
Yeah, because it's really easy to fall into the panic mode.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I haven't found anything, and then it's like 5, 6 jobs, 5, 6 jobs, 5, 6 jobs.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're adding more opportunity to measure yourself as a failure.
Yes.
Rather than focus on the quality of them, and just remember who has control about bringing you into an interview.
Not me, it's them, isn't it?
Exactly. So you've put yourself out there, you've shown your best version of yourself. But this is where I mean about not getting emotionally attached, because remember, you gave yourself that job.
I know. I've done it about 6 or 7 times. I got one this morning going, you weren't selected, and I was quite sad.
That's not a measure of you. Remember, it's not.
I know. It's so, like I was saying to my partner, it's very hard to not be disheartened when I know that I could do that job really well, and they don't know what a hard worker and like how much I really care about my job when I am in a job, even when I worked in retail. So like I do find it really tough to disassociate from that.
Yeah. So we're up to 2 to 3 jobs a day.
And I think that that's kind of where I would leave that at, like really focus on making those 2 to 3 applications really good.
Yeah. And if one day all you do is send 1 application, that's fine. Because remember, everything else you did that day is working towards getting somewhere. It's that classic journey of, it's a stepping stone.
The steps up the mountain, right?
Exactly. Your steps one day might just be, I did 3 uplearn courses.
Yeah.
And then the next day is I've done 2 applications, but I didn't do much learning today. And it's just working through, as long as you have this process, because getting a job is your job at the moment.
Yes, getting a job is my job.
And it's getting a job that, like you said, is getting a job that actually fits you.
Definitely.
Because you could tomorrow just go, screw it, okay, I'm going back into education. You could get a job straight away.
Yeah.
And you know that, and you have that to fall back on if that's really, if it gets to next July.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't be able to survive till July. It'll definitely have to be before then.
But, there is always, and that's the one thing about education you always have that you can fall back into.
To fall back on. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hopefully that's a process you can do. And obviously you can try and think about how you're going to split your time up. So, you're getting up out of bed maybe when your partner goes to work.
He works from home. Lucky thing.
So when he gets up to go to work from home, that's when you start your job of finding a job again.
Yeah.
You have your lunch break. Maybe you take a lunch break together, and then you go back to work. He goes back to work, and you treat it as a job.
As a job. Yeah, definitely.
The end of the day is the same end of the day. You put down a laptop, and just like with a normal job, not teaching, but a normal job.
Yeah.
I've been in the business as well. So from a normal job perspective, when you close the laptop, you also emotionally disconnect from it.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, you got to live as well.
Yeah.
You've got to, have that downtime, and you don't want to impact, that stress of, I'm not getting a job onto your other half as well. In that sense,
Of course.
So you treat it as a job, and it's just like, you can talk about it as if it's work. It's like, how did your day at work go today?
Yeah.
Well, he says it, and then how did yours? You're telling him, this is my job. I'm upskilling myself, and I'm going to get a new job.
Having been reflective and oscillated back and forth between mentor and coach, I specifically asked as of Monday morning, what her process was going to be. She then outlined everything she took from the session so far into a schedule and an action plan, and I challenged her on specifics, where she would go and what she would upskill herself on, as it is easy to say you will do something, but much harder to avoid doing it when you are specific about what you're going to do. I also really challenged her and went hard on why we need to really focus on getting the quality of application in rather than putting in 5 or 6 applications. I made the point of too many applications of lower quality is just more opportunity to measure yourself as a failure rather than spending the time and giving yourself the best chance of succeeding. When you take risks at upskilling and making yourself the best applicant, putting in the best application, you give yourself the best chance of succeeding, but you also really risk failing as the best version of yourself, which is hard to do. But remember, it isn't a measure of your worth. It's a measure of what they're looking for. It is nothing about you as a person. Just be the best you can be better every day by making self-improvement and getting your next job your job. You accept the hard stuff as well as the easy stuff, and you become disciplined at it, and you show an employer you are disciplined. You worked on yourself whilst getting a job. You didn't sit on your ass binge watching Netflix, sending off just another set of generic applications for jobs. When you show you were intentional about getting that next job, things happen and people take notice. But it takes time and discipline. Remember, discipline is the precursor to motivation. Motivation doesn't just happen. It is born from being disciplined. Now let's see how I finished this coaching session. And there was one thing she mentioned earlier that I did not yet touch on, which I wanted to make sure that we touched on, just in case that changed what we had just done.
You did say something, and I've sort of left it in the back burner.
Okay.
You said about potentially moving to Wales next year.
Yeah. My partner is Welsh.
Mm-hmm.
And he moved here because I was stuck with my visa. So like I'm now on indefinite leave to remain, so there's no restrictions or anything. But he's Welsh and his family's in Wales and I don't have any family here. So we do want to eventually buy a house, and it is a lot cheaper in Wales than it is in London. So that's the end goal. And that is also kind of like a stress in the sense of like getting a job, because what if I find something that I absolutely love but it doesn't fit with moving?
Have you had that conversation?
We have. Look, I don't want to live in London anymore anyway. Like I'm very much ready to go. We wanted to actually move this year because it was going to be like I finish up teaching, we move to Wales and I get a job in Wales.
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing, alongside his job, he works in finance. He's doing finance course and it's funded by the English government. And if he moves to Wales, he's not applicable for the funding. So he has to do half the time of the course living in England. So that brings us to kind of like July, August next year, where we would like to think about moving, whether we move then or like later on that year. But that's also kind of put an interesting motion into like job hunting. But I thought if I find something that I like, then I've got that on my resume if I do then want to move into something similar in Wales.
Okay. So when it comes to looking at jobs, if you're looking long term, because we're looking at your next career move rather than just getting a job for the sake of getting a job, would that change the sort of jobs you're looking at?
No.
Okay. So maybe virtual or hybrid work could work in that particular.
Yeah. So I have been looking at like a lot of jobs these days. There's no fully, like, I haven't been able to find a fully remote job. I think on LinkedIn, I found like one fully remote job in all the time I've been looking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are hybrid, and it's something that like my partner works hybrid, but they're in once a month. So if we move to Wales, him coming up to London once a month isn't a problem. It's not a huge burden on money. It's far, but it's once a month. So I would absolutely be fine with doing something that's hybrid, but if I found a job that I was like absolutely loving and I could move to Wales and it could still work, awesome. But I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
It's a shitty time for it not to have happened now when I am doing the full career change, because we were talking about me doing teaching for another year, but I'd made that decision already.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I go into this, I'm going to leave this profession in a really bad state where I've left as positively as I could do at the end of this year. So
Okay.
I would like something maybe hybrid, but
Okay.
yeah.
You never know what comes around.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of if they bring you to interview then, at what point are you thinking you might share that?
I probably wouldn't. Is that really bad? I think I need to think about myself. And I think getting myself in the door and showing them how good I am, and then maybe share a bit closer. But I don't know, I probably wouldn't straight away. Then you also want to be open. So I don't know, that's kind of hard.
There's two ways to do it. And I guess you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the other person.
Of course.
Obviously, you go into interview. I wouldn't put it straight there because that gives them an option to maybe say no.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they were to then offer you the job, straight away, the power balance, if you think about the power balance, you go into an interview, they have the power because they're making a decision. The moment they offer to you, you then have the position of power.
Yeah.
That's why you're allowed to negotiate wages and that stuff at that point in time. At that point in time, I would also go, and what options are there for maybe hybrid working from elsewhere? Because we're thinking, you don't say we are, we're thinking of going somewhere else.
Yeah.
The moment you do that, you're keeping them fully in the loop, and then, they could come back to you at that point because they've already shown their cards to you. They've already shown that we want you. You're the best candidate for the job. At that point, they can come back to you and they can say, no, that's not an option. At least you know where you stand.
Yeah.
Or they can come back and say, yeah, that's something we could potentially look at in the future. They will never say yes straight off the bat.
Of course.
So they'll say that and you go, okay, well, then at least the stress is off in the future.
Yeah.
You've got this job, you then have the possibility of moving. So the moment I would suggest doing it is at that point when they come back with the offer.
Yeah.
If you waited and you told them, let's say a month in, oh, by the way, in 3 months' time, we're thinking of moving, straight off the bat, you've lost trust.
Yeah. Okay.
And therefore it's now, you then have to earn it back. It becomes horrible. Whereas if you, like you said, open and honest, but it's choosing when to do that. And it's when the power's in your court, not their court.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's smart.
So here you can actually see there was a mini coaching session within the coaching session where I returned to the point she made about moving to Wales, and we explored that as an additional layer to what we've just discussed in terms of what type of jobs she might apply for, would it change that, and also when to actually bring that up as part of the application process for a job. So this could have easily been ignored, but actually you can see by raising it, we got to a very important point and aspect of the process she's about to go through, because she didn't know when she was going to broach that subject with an employer. She was actually thinking about holding it back. And when we explored it, you can see that actually it was a very important exploration to have as to when to mention it in terms of the balance of power within the negotiation process of getting a job. And this is actually advice for anyone who's listening to this, who's going through this process of looking for a job. The moment they offer you the job, you, for probably the only time in your employment with that employer, you have the power to negotiate. You can ask for what you want. You can ask for a raise in money, which usually you would go with cap in hand for that when you're in a job. Whereas actually during the negotiation process, the power's in your court to demand the wage you want. They can always turn around and say no. That's the only time that you have the power to say that and be in that position to say something. So that's the point when, if there are any concessions or any points you want to raise within the negotiation for the job role, that is the moment to bring it up. The moment they offer you the job, They show their hand, they show you that you are the best person for that job, and they almost give you ultimate power during that moment in time. That's when to use it. You can see the last part of this conversation we're about to go on to. I then decided to raise one final thing which could potentially help in a job search that we hadn't discussed at that moment in time. So I thought if I bring this up, she can choose to go with it, or she can choose to say, actually, at this point in time, I don't think I'm ready for this.
Do you feel like we have got success based on what you said you wanted success being?
Yes. I think I said that I wanted to kind of have a clear goal of what job I want. I think we've narrowed that down considerably instead of everything.
Yeah.
And I think having a plan on how to do that realistically has kind of exceeded what I thought I'd get out of today. So I'm quite positive going into Monday.
Yeah, that's good. I think there is one other thing which I could suggest, and this could be a maybe thing. This is me completely coming out of coaching and going into mentoring as well. There's another thing that you can do to increase your pool of options for a career.
Mm-hmm.
So an unspoken thing that is there for career hunting is networking.
Yeah, so that's why I got a LinkedIn page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how to do it. Like, I've Googled how to network. I've tried. I don't get it. Like, I'm being on it. Like, I don't know how to do it.
Okay, if it was a room full of people, what would you do?
Just go up to people and have a chat.
Okay, now imagine that room full of people had their name above their head and their job role above their head. How would that change what you would do in that room?
I would probably source out people that are more in the industry that I'd like to go into.
Okay. How would it change your approach to how you would talk to them?
It probably wouldn't because I think talking to strangers, you kind of have the same sort of way of talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe ask advice. So you instantly have like a connection, don't you? Because you're like, you have this role and I want to do something similar or go into that, then I can. But LinkedIn is so, like, there's so many people.
Yeah.
Like, so I've done a bit where, like, you know, I applied for a job at the South Bank Centre, which I didn't get. It was another one that I was very much thought I should have got it. And I found a few people who worked there and sent like a, hey, I'm looking at applying. Would love to hear what the culture's like, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't heard back. And I've done that a few times and I haven't heard back from people. So I don't really know how to go about it because it's not a room. It's not like, if there is a room full of people, that person's not just going to turn their back on you. But on LinkedIn, I'm finding that I'm not getting past the message.
Yeah. If it was a room full of people, you got to remember also, walking into a room full of people, everyone's already in a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got to imagine that that's almost what like LinkedIn is like, or what social
Yeah.
media is like. People are already in a conversation with their bubble of people.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to walk up to that person, you know their name, you know their job title, you've said you'd love to get information, you know, you want to find that connection, you want to ask about something, which is, I think, is a great approach. But you also got to remember on the other side of things, they're already in this conversation with this.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go, why should I add this connection? Why should I add this person to this bubble? Why should I get this person into the conversation?
Okay.
So it's a value added thing. You're seeking something from them, which is great. You know, I'm just thinking about applying to this. I'd love to know what the culture's like. I think in the other side of things, you maybe need to also add something to them.
Okay.
So think about what I can offer you. So it's about maybe having some presence online, maybe start building up a bit of a presence online where you're like, you know, what you can offer. So we talked about, you know, you doing the skills and stuff. So then you can start building maybe your profile. You can maybe have a few posts or something that maybe show what you are about.
Okay.
This can be a little bit underlying just to build that network. And then you can go, you know, you can reach out to people and, you know, you're in a position, I'd love to get some advice about, you know, what it is that you do and how you got there.
Mhm.
And so you also have on the other side of things, oh, by the way, I'm really interested in this. I'd love to have a conversation where I can share my thoughts as well. So then it's like, I'm not just going to ask you a question and you're going to tell me, but I'd
Okay.
also like,
Something back.
so
Definitely. Would it be worth, like, if I'm doing those upskilling things? I've seen a few people do it on LinkedIn where they share the certificates that they've gotten on their like LinkedIn profiles and
yeah, so share certificates. The other thing to do is just once you've done and you've learned something, put a post where you're sharing what you've learned.
okay.
Because then if people do, let's say you apply for a job, you put on your job application, you link your LinkedIn to it.
Yeah.
They can see A, your job history, where you've summarized some of the key skills from it, but then B, also your posts that you have put that show you've done these, these certificates, you've learned something, what you think,
Okay.
this one was a really great thing because of this. I maybe did this one and it wasn't great because I think this. At least you're then putting your thoughts out there. So
Right. It's something that, like, when I was starting to look for jobs, obviously, because I said like teaching is very much like I can just hop very easily, that people were saying networking. And I just like I felt like I've tried, but I don't know what I'm doing. Kind of like, like you're swimming, but you don't know how to swim. So you just keeping your head just above. You're like, I'm here, but I don't know what I'm doing. In fact, it's felt kind of like that because I wasn't really sure how to go about doing it. But there's some really good ideas that I can start.
Yeah.
And I've got like there's a few people that I've added connections that are like pages. Like I followed an education one that was that posts some really cool things about education. That there was a one yesterday that was about like PSHE type stuff. So that's definitely something that I could.
Have you still got that post in your feed or somewhere?
Yes. Yes.
Everyone who's commented on it,
Mm-hmm.
if there's someone on there who's not in a teaching position, but maybe have a look through, reach out to those people because these are the people, these are your people.
Okay. All right. All right. Because yeah, that's something like I was there was a few where like I went to kind of click on the profile and LinkedIn was like, you can't, you don't have enough connections. You can't do that. And I was like, but I think I could talk to this person, but I think I need to just build. Yeah. So reach out. I'm just going to write myself a little note. To commenters. But yeah, definitely. Because it's just something that if you don't know how to do it, how do you do it?
I mean, there's complete different levels of networking. My best networking has come through. So I also host a podcast and I do a podcast with people. And, my best networking tool is I want to learn from all of these people. So I just go, well, I give you a platform where we can have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
And it just goes off and, people love that. So it's almost like if I've walked into that room of people, because I've got this podcast, I can say, I'd love to get you on a podcast. That's like me going up to them and just taking them to the bar saying, let me buy you a drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've given you somewhere. So it's the ultimate level of things. So you could do something like, reach out to someone saying, I'm writing an article. It's just like you're basically doing a blog, for example. You can start a blog on PSHE and say, I'm writing an article about PSHE offerings in schools and how they're valued, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to get your opinion on this, just as a thought piece. You then, can publish it onto LinkedIn. You can link them into it. You've made that network, but you've shown them that you're a credible person that maybe in the future when they're thinking about someone, bang, you're someone that
Your name they already know. Yeah. Yeah.
it's all these unwritten things about social media.
It's crazy. You just don't, like, as I said, you just don't think of it when you're in a profession that you can just jump from bit to bit to bit without putting much effort into. Like, it's a game.
It is a game.
It's a game that I'm not sure how to play, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to hear what you do with it. That would be amazing. And yeah, so hopefully you've got a daily routine that you could at least try Monday to Friday.
Definitely.
You've got other things that you could be filling your time in potentially, your networking, trying a pet project or something. You're never going to get this time again.
Exactly.
So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to spend all the time stressing and putting 5 to 6 job applications in, or are you going to spend a bit of time doing that and the other time working on yourself, improving yourself and getting yourself closer towards that dream job, that dream career where you're in a house in the middle of nowhere in Wales. You're able to travel to, I don't know, different schools, offer, PSHE one-off sessions, maybe running your own business, doing this, where you network into other people online and they get you jobs and, it's there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's what are you going to do for it?
Exactly. And I just need to put in my time.
Mm-hmm.
And it is my job.
It is your job.
It is
And
my job.
just like every job, you fit it around all the other things that you do. You switch off from it.
Yeah.
You look after yourself because, you need to be your best self when you go into interview.
Mm-hmm.
So part of your self-care routine is making sure you're ready for that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
It's exciting. This I feel excited about this, which is not how I was feeling this morning when I got that other rejection.
No, good. I'm glad. I hope you've taken something from this conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. You've been such a help. I think like being able to get what I think and, some advice and how to do it, because it's tough to do it on your own. That's what it is. It's tough to do it on your own. So this has been a real help, and I've come out with quite a few things that Monday morning I can just get in and do it. And I feel positive about it, which I haven't felt in a few weeks. So that's really good.
That's good.
Thank you. This has been very enlightening, and I'm looking forward to Monday.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Chris. We'll keep in touch.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you.
And until next time, remember, to lead requires us to continuously